When I tell people I'm from New York, they instantly see pictures of giant skyscrapers and fantastic pizza and Broadway shows. But the truth is, that's not the New York that I'm from. I'm from the New York that has mountains and rolling hills and cows. Lots and lots of cows. When I was looking for recipes for this episode, I wanted to do something that was from a newspaper or a periodical or something like that. And so I was looking through all of these old publications that went out in the early 1900s, and I found one called the Rural New Yorker, and I was pretty excited about that given that I am from rural New York. However, here's kind of the irony, if you will, of this whole publication. The Rural New Yorker was a publication that was published in New York City. Once I got over the initial shock of a rural New York publication being published in New York City, I did find a recipe in there that was pretty intriguing, which was crushed strawberry gelatin. And we haven't really done anything with gelatin on our show yet, so this is kind of new territory for us. And when you think gelatin, you might think the 1950s, 1960s, maybe even into the 1970s. However, our recipe for today comes from May 1919. This recipe starts out pretty simply. We're just going to take some strawberries and cut the tops of them off. And then we're going to mash the strawberries up and add some sugar and let that sit for a little while so that those juices can develop. Alright, the recipe doesn't actually say how much sugar to put in our strawberries, but I'm going to put about 1/4 cup of sugar, and I think that'll do it based on other recipes that I've made in the past. I know that that definitely is enough sugar that this is going to start to develop some juices. And so I'm just going to stir this together and set it aside and move on to the actual gelatin part of this. I have on the stove some water that is boiling. We're going to need 1 cup of that in just a minute, but while I am waiting for that to boil, I've got a cup of cold water here and 2 tablespoons of unflavored gelatin, and we're just gonna whisk those together until we get that combined. And after that has sat for a minute and after our water has boiled, we're going to add 1 cup of the boiling water, and then we're pretty much ready to put this thing together at that point. If you've ever cooked with unflavored gelatin, you know that at this point this does not smell the best, but you know, we're just gonna plow ahead. We're gonna add our mashed strawberries to this right now that have been sitting in the sugar, and combine that with the water and gelatin. And after that, all we need to do is put it in a mold and then put it in the fridge so that it can solidify. I don't actually own a Jell-O mold, so I'm just going to be using a bundt pan for this, and I think that'll be all right. But I'm going to get these strawberries distributed as best as I can evenly throughout the bottom of the bundt pan, and then stick it in the fridge until it becomes solid. It's been about 3 hours, and I'm just about ready to pull that out of the fridge and do the final steps here to serve this up. However, the last direction is to serve this with some whipped cream. So I'm going to make a simple whipped cream. This is not actually part of the recipe, except that it should have whipped cream. They assume that you already know how to make it. So I have some whipping cream here, a little bit of sugar and some vanilla, and then we're going to serve this up. exactly what you would expect it to be. It's a strawberry jello. You've got the chunks of strawberry in there that are still very firm, and because we mashed them roughly with the masher, you've got some small pieces, you've got some big pieces, so there's an uneven texture. But then you have the softness of the gelatin, which, by the way, firmed up very nicely. I have done things in the past with gelatin that came out soupy, or they came out not as firm as I would like them to be. The consistency of the gelatin is perfect, I would say, as far as gelatin goes. And since there really isn't a whole lot for flavoring other than the strawberries themselves and the sugar, which would have created a strawberry juice that would have mixed into the gelatin and the water when we made this, there's not a lot for flavor whatsoever outside of the strawberries. So I was a little concerned that the gelatin would be bland or unflavored outside of the actual fruit itself. But I do think that some of the flavor has permeated through the gelatin as well. And of course, whipped cream. You can't go wrong with real whipped cream. I'm not really a gelatin kind of guy, but I 100% will eat this. Make sure you check out our other recipes, and we'll see you again on Recipe Reviver.